A single dad delivery driver heard a quiet cry for help on a stormy night. The rain had been falling since 4 in the afternoon. By the time Mason Calloway clocked in for his evening shift at Primo Pizza, the cobblestone streets of Harlow Creek were slick and dark, reflecting the amber glow of street lamps like broken mirrors scattered across the road. He pulled on his red delivery vest, zipped it up over his jacket, and slung the insulated backpack over his shoulders. His sneakers were already damp. His phone battery was at 61%. And somewhere across town, his 7-year-old daughter, Lily, was at Mrs. Kowalski's apartment, probably already in her pajamas, waiting for him to call and say goodnight. It wasn't the life Mason had imagined for himself at 32, but it was his life, and he'd learned minus slowly, painfully. Honestly, minus to be grateful for it. He'd taken the delivery job 14 months ago. After the landscaping company, he'd worked for lost 3 major contracts and let half its crew go. Single parenthood had a way of stripping a man of his pride, but sharpening his priorities. Lily needed school supplies. Lily needed her asthma inhaler. Lily needed new shoes because she'd grown 2 sizes in 8 months, like some kind of miracle in sneakers. So Mason delivered pizzas. He learned the back streets of Harlow Creek better than anyone. He knew which alley cut 4 minutes off a route to the east side. He knew which apartment buzzers never worked, and which residents tipped in cash. He became, in his quiet way, someone who showed up minus rain, snow, holiday rush, whatever. And showing up, he discovered, was its own kind of dignity. That particular Tuesday night, the storm was worsening by the hour. His first 2 deliveries went smoothly, minus a college kid in a ground-floor flat, who tipped $3 and smelled like instant noodles, and an older couple on Birchwood Lane, who insisted on giving him a cup of hot tea through the doorway. He accepted it gratefully, drank it standing on their porch while the rain hammered the gutters, then got back on the road. The 3rd delivery was to a place he hadn't been before, 14 via Aldermore, minus a narrow address, tucked deep into the old quarter of town, where the streets were barely wide enough for a car and the buildings were made of pale stone that had been standing since before Mason's grandfather was born. He parked at the end of the lane and walked the rest of the way on foot, box balanced in both hands, rain-soaked and squinting through the dark. The door was wooden, heavy, set into the stone wall like it had grown there. A single bulb glowed weakly above the frame. He knocked. A moment passed. Then another. He knocked again, louder this time. The door opened minus, and a woman stood in the threshold. She was blonde, wearing a blue floral dress that seemed oddly delicate for a stormy night indoors. She was holding the door handle like she needed it for balance. Her eyes were calm, measured, but there was something underneath them minus something Mason had learned to recognize. He'd seen it in his own face, once in the bathroom mirror at 2 a.m. after Lily's mother had left, and the silence of the apartment had felt like a living thing pressing down on his chest. It was the look of someone who was holding themselves together very carefully. "Hi," he said, keeping his voice easy. "Primo Pizza. Large margarita." "Yes." She reached into the small pocket of her dress. "Sorry, minus, let me get." "No rush," Mason said. She fumbled slightly. Her hand was trembling minus just barely, just enough that Mason noticed. He looked at her face again. Her eyes were slightly red at the rims, as though she'd been crying not long ago. And her jaw was set with the kind of deliberate steadiness that people use when they're actively refusing to fall apart. He held out the box. She took it. Their fingers didn't quite touch, but the warmth from the cardboard passed between them for a moment in the cold, wet air. "Thank you," she said quietly. He was already turning to go when he heard it. It wasn't a sob. It wasn't a scream or a shout. It was barely even a sound at all minus more, like the absence of one. A sharp held breath that someone lets go when they think no one is listening. A small, involuntary exhale of exhaustion and grief that she probably didn't even know she'd made. Mason stopped. He stood there in the rain for a second, facing away from her door, the water running down the back of his neck. Every reasonable part of him said, "Keep walking. It is not your business. You have 2 more deliveries. Lily is waiting for your call." He turned around. The woman was still in the doorway, holding the pizza box against her chest like it was something precious, staring at the ground. She hadn't noticed that he'd turned back yet. "Hey," Mason said gently. "You okay?" She looked up, and for one unguarded second, before the composure clicked back into place, he saw everything. The loneliness, the weight, the exhaustion of being the only person in a home, the only one holding all the pieces together. And doing it so quietly that nobody even thought to ask. "I am fine," she said, the automatic answer. He knew it well. "You sure?" He wasn't pushy about it. He just asked it plainly, the way you might ask someone if they dropped something minus a simple check. Nothing loaded. She opened her mouth, closed it, looked down at the pizza box. "It is my daughter's birthday," she said finally, and her voice cracked slightly on the last word. "She is turning 9 tomorrow. I ordered the pizza because she loves it, and I was going to make tonight a little celebration. Just us 2, she paused. "But she has been at her dad's this week, and there was a mix-up, and now she is not coming until Saturday, and She stopped herself, shook her head slightly. "I am sorry. I don't know why I am telling you this." "Because it is a hard night," Mason said simply. She looked at him. "I know what that is like," he said. "Not quite the same, but close enough. Single parent. Kid who is not home when you expected them. House that gets very quiet in a way that doesn't feel good." The woman he still didn't know her name, stared at him for a moment, with an expression he couldn't quite read. Then, very softly, she said, "Yeah, that is exactly it. The quiet." He didn't go inside. He wasn't that kind of story. And neither was she, not that night, at least. They stood in the doorway for maybe 10 more minutes, the rain falling steadily beyond the stone arch above them, and she told him that her name was Claire, that she'd moved to Harlow Creek 2 years ago after her divorce, that her daughter's name was Rosie, and she was obsessed with drawing horses, and knew every country's flag by heart. Mason told her about Lily, about the sneakers, about how Lily had recently decided that her favorite color was the inside of a thunderstorm, which he'd described as dark purple, but also silver, and how he'd thought that was the most specific and beautiful thing a 7-year-old had ever said. Claire smiled at that, a real smile, not a polite one. "She sounds wonderful," she said. "She is," Mason said. "She is the whole thing." When Dumbasandaving. He had to go. He had deliveries. He had a goodnight call to make, a wet jacket to dry out, a shift that ended at 10. He said goodbye simply, the way you say goodbye when something small but real has happened between 2 people. "I hope Rosie's birthday is great on Saturday," he said. "Thank you," Claire said. "Really, thank you for..." She gestured vaguely at the air between them, at the conversation. At the fact that he'd turned around at all. "For this." He nodded, turned up his collar against the rain, and walked back up the alley. He called Lily at 9:47 that night. She was still awake, barely, and she told him in a sleepy voice that Mrs. Kowalski had made pierogi for dinner, and that she'd saved him one in the fridge because it is the best one. "Dad, I checked all of them." He laughed and told her he'd be there to pick her up in the morning, first thing, and that she should get some sleep. "Dad," she said, just before he hung up. "Yeah, Bug, were you nice to people today?" It was a question she'd started asking about 2 months ago, out of nowhere, and he still wasn't entirely sure where it had come from, but every time she asked it, he felt the full weight of it the simple, enormous standard of it. "Yeah," he said. "I was nice to someone tonight." "Good," Lily said, satisfied. "Good night." "Good night, Bug." 3 weeks later, Mason was working a Saturday afternoon shift when a walk-in customer came to the front counter of Primo Pizza. He was in the back checking his delivery schedule when Marco, one of the counter guys, came to find him. "Somebody's asking for you specifically," Marco said, looking mildly curious. "Lady with a little girl. Kids carrying, like, a drawing or something." Mason walked out front. Claire was standing at the counter in a green jacket, her hair down and dry this time, looking much more like herself minus whoever that was. He was only beginning to find out. Next to her, holding a piece of paper with both hands and looking up at him with enormous, serious brown eyes, was a girl of about 9 with a ponytail and paint on her left wrist. "Are you Mason?" the girl asked. "I am," he said, crouching down to her level. "My mom said you were kind to her on my birthday," the girl said, with the gravity of someone delivering an important official message. "So I made you something." She held out the drawing. It was a pizza delivery person, minus clearly meant to be him, red vest, and all minus standing in the rain on a cobblestone street. The rain was drawn in careful blue lines. The delivery bag was bright red, and above the figure, in large uneven letters surrounded by small stars, the girl had written, "Thank you for being nice." Mason looked at it for a long moment. He thought about Lily asking him every night if he'd been kind. He thought about the 10 minutes in a doorway on Via Aldermore, when he could have kept walking, and didn't. He thought about how the smallest pivot minus a single turn on a wet street. A soft question asked, without agenda minus, could matter more than you'd ever know in the moment you made it. He looked up at Rosie. "This is the best thing anyone's ever given me," he said honestly. "Can I keep it?" Rosie nodded, very seriously. "I made it for you to keep." He framed it. It hung in the narrow hallway of his apartment, between a photo of Lily on her first day of kindergarten and a drawing she had made of their family, minus just the two of them, holding hands, with a lopsided sun overhead. Now there were 3 things on that wall, and on the nights when the quiet pressed in minus when the rent felt heavy, and the shift ran long, and the life he had seemed smaller than the one he'd imagined, minus Mason Calloway would walk down that hallway. Look at the drawing a little girl had made, because he'd turned around in the rain, and remember what it was worth to show up, not just with a pizza box, but with your whole self. That, he'd decided, was enough. That was more than enough. Sometimes the bravest thing a person can do is simply turn around.